Sony just patented NFTs. This is bad. Is Sony's PS5 support getting worse? And the Resident Evil 4 reviews are in. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. I am finally over this flu. I have never had this much energy in my life, and I'm back in the studio. We're gonna start out this video talking about the Jedi Survivor trailer. I was a little bummed when this game got delayed because if you guys remember, it was supposed to come out March 15th, which if that happened, I would be playing it right now. But now that I've seen the trailer, I am so much more excited, and I'm glad it got delayed because it looks like it's running well. These developers have been getting pretty brazen lately with how many frame drops they're allowing in their trailer. One in recent memory. It's not really recent, but Redfall, I saw a trailer for it a few months ago, and there were a lot of frame drops in that trailer. Same with Starfield, a lot of other games, but this time around with Jedi Survivor, there was not a frame drop or stutter to be seen, and boy am I excited about that because this game looks like it's so much bigger than Jedi Fallen Order, which, side note, if you haven't played Jedi Fallen Order, it's been on sale all over the place for as low as like $4. I've seen it boxed at Best Buy for that low. It might be a little bit more than that now, but I think it's like $20 usually, so I'll link it down in the description. You should play that game before you play Jedi Survivor. I'm sure they'll have some sort of recap or something like that of the story, but in my opinion, it's one of the best stories in a Star Wars video game like ever. I remember it more than most of the stories in the TV shows that have come out over the past few years, so if you haven't played it, make sure you give it a shot at least before Jedi Survivor comes out, because I think that'll help you appreciate how much stuff they're doing in the trailer that feels genuinely new to me. Obviously, having companions that can fight with you and have their own finishing moves is awesome. Seeing enemies use crossguard lightsabers is also awesome. All the new planets. The trailer kind of talks about going to a planet where they can actually hide from the Empire, and when they're talking about it, there's like an asteroid on the ships, what's it called? The Stinger Mantis's like nav computer thing. I don't think they're gonna go live on an asteroid, but honestly, it would be kind of cool if they ended up in the planet that Galaxy's Edge takes place in, Batuu. I could see that being like an outpost where people can kind of hide from the Empire, because in the lore of Star Wars, that's like an outpost that people use to hide from the First Order on. So, you know, that could be kind of cool. Grease is rocking like if Jason Alexander grew his hair out, and that's pretty cool as well. I mean, I could not be more excited for this game, and it's coming out pretty soon. At the end of April, it's gonna be great, I think, and if you're excited for it, let me know down in the comments below. But before that, at the end of this week, actually, I will be playing the Resident Evil 4 remake. I don't know why I was a little bit worried about reviews on this one, mainly because I feel like the turnaround between Resident Evil Village and this game was so quick. And Resident Evil Village, that's a game you could beat in like 5 or 6 hours after you beat it the first time. It feels a lot longer than it is, mainly because of that hub area, the actual village. It takes you to different parts of the map, and they're distinctly different. So like, yeah, it feels a lot longer than it is, whereas Resident Evil 4 is one of the longest games in the Resident Evil series. I think the one that's the longest would be Resident Evil 6, because you have a campaign for Leon, a campaign for Chris, a campaign for Jake, and then a campaign for Ada. So you've got a lot of content there, but outside of that, it's either 4 or 5 that are the longest in the series. So to see that turned around in just 2 years, or 3 years if you count the gap between Resident Evil 3 remake, I was like, how are they going to do this? But now that the reviews are out, this game has gotten nothing but 10 out of 10s. A lot of people are saying that it's not going to be as impressive to people as Resident Evil 4 was when it came out the first time, and that's obviously because, you know, games have come a long way, and a lot of games that we play today are directly influenced by Resident Evil 4, but this one modernizes it and makes it feel just as good to play as it did back in the day. And if I had to rank my favorite games of all time, Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. I wasn't allowed to play M games when I was a kid, like rated M games, so my grandpa took me to Circuit City on my birthday, and we got an E-rated game in Resident Evil 4, and then we put the discs from Resident Evil 4, because there was 2 GameCube discs in the E-rated games case to hide it from my mom. So my grandpa was really cool back in the day, and my dad saw me playing it and was like, I gotta get in on this. So it's like one of the only video games my dad has ever played. So yeah, Resident Evil 4, very special game to me. I'm very excited. The one thing I'm kind of like a little bit disappointed about is that they announced the Mercenaries mode was coming to this game at the last State of Play, or the last Capcom showcase, I forget which one, and it looks like that's actually coming after release, which is kind of a bummer because because the Mercenaries mode in this game is the best Mercenaries mode. I know a lot of people like it in 6, but this is like the format that they use for the 3DS Mercenaries game, which no one played, but I did, and it was absolutely phenomenal, super addictive. I love that game so much. So yeah, to know that Mercenaries is coming later, that bums me out a little bit. Also, I saw a ton of discourse over the weekend about Separate Ways, the ADA campaign not being included. Some people were saying that it's like a moot point and you shouldn't be upset about that because the Separate Ways campaign came out with the PS2 release, which was after the GameCube release. But by that logic, I could be upset that they don't have Operation ADA, which was just like a shorter version of Separate Ways, right? Like that came out with the GameCube one. So yeah, it is kind of a bummer to see missing content, but a verified leaker said that we're going to get Separate Ways as an update later on. So I'm glad about that. I don't know. The only disappointing thing is at launch, it has less content than the original release did, which is a trend we're seeing lately, but it looks like Capcom's gonna make us whole with that with free updates as time goes on. So that's great. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 Remake, it comes out this Friday, 10 out of 10s across the board, probably the best rated game of 2023. I hope it sells well because I really actually want them to remake 5 and 6. I know a lot of people don't want to see more 6, but I feel like they could remake it and sort of use the same story, but make it one unified game, and it could turn out pretty cool. But yeah, I'm gonna get this game this Friday. Let me know if you are down in the comments. You guys are never gonna believe this, but the whole battle between Xbox and PlayStation over Activision is still going. It's supposedly going to wrap up by June, so we only have a couple months of this news to talk about left. But yeah, the new statement from Xbox is actually kind of shocking because they're basically saying, no, PlayStation does not have to worry about us owning Activision. They have to worry about Ubisoft and EA, because if you rank all of the biggest publishers, Activision is like 5th on the list, but if you rank them, like EA and Ubisoft are higher than Activision. Now, honestly, that kind of shocked me just because Call of Duty is the biggest game, but when you think about it, Call of Duty is the biggest game, but EA has a lot of huge games, right? And so does Ubisoft. Like Ubisoft has stuff like The Crew generating revenue, they have stuff like Assassin's Creed generating revenue, they have new Assassin's Creed games, old Assassin's Creed games, all this stuff's getting content. Like Far Cry 6 is another game that sold tons and tons of copies. So they have a lot of different best-selling games, whereas Activision takes all of their studios and funnels them into Call of Duty and puts all of their eggs in the Call of Duty basket. So while yes, as one game, like one IP, Call of Duty is the biggest in the industry, having their stuff spread out makes EA and Ubisoft a little bit bigger on the ranking list of biggest publishers. So basically what I'm saying is that this is a really bad argument from Microsoft, mainly because people would buy an Xbox if they knew they were going to get exclusive content, early access, or some other benefit on Call of Duty, because Call of Duty is the biggest game, right? Like if you take all of these other games that make EA and Ubisoft bigger publishers than Activision, the different fan bases for those games are much, much smaller than what you would see with something like Call of Duty. Like Call of Duty is like Madden, right? Like, or FIFA, but even bigger. Things are just getting really messy with this. I saw one of the documents that came out that Xbox's lawyer kind of screwed up and said that Sony has a Wolverine and a Superman game coming out, or like because of those games, those sell really well on PlayStation, and that kind of makes up for the fact that they might lose Call of Duty in the future. But obviously he was talking about Spider-Man, not Superman. I don't think PlayStation has a Superman game coming up, and just the way it was worded made it seem like he really meant Spider-Man. But of course, you saw a bunch of news stories over the weekend talking about that. But I also think it's a really good sign that Diablo 4 is not getting caught up in any of this. Like Diablo 4, regardless of if Microsoft is able to pick up Activision, that is always going to be a cross-platform game. And before, I was kind of iffy on it after playing Diablo Immortal last summer, but now, after giving the beta a try this weekend, it's absolutely phenomenal. So to know that we're not losing out on that on PlayStation, that's great as well. I just really hope this wraps up soon, not only because I'm sick of hearing about it, but PlayStation is obviously holding back game announcements until all of this is resolved, because if Sony announces a bunch of huge first-party games that are going to sell like millions and millions of copies, Microsoft will definitely take that and use it in court. So they're holding back game announcements, they're holding back game releases, it seems like, as well. I just want all of this to wrap up so we can get back to normal. So I don't know if you guys remember, but last year we talked about this news story when PlayStation dropped their PlayStation Stars thing, where they were going to tie in priority access to PlayStation support. And at the time, a lot of people weren't really too sure how much that was going to affect your ability to get support on your PlayStation 5. Now, of course, because the PS5 itself is a much better made console than what we saw with the PS4, the PS4 Pro, and the PS3, a lot of people haven't really had to send theirs in for an RMA or a repair just yet, which is great on its own. But now that more and more people are having to send their console in, we're starting to see the effects of that PlayStation Stars thing on their support services. So I originally read this article on Yahoo Games, and basically what they're saying is that they've looked at Reddit, they've looked at Twitter, they've looked at Reset Era, like all the different forums that people bitch about video games on. And what they're reading is that the support has just gone down the absolute gutter with how responsive PlayStation is. Like, you know, normally if you want to call support on any technological device that breaks down, you would just look up the phone number, call, sit on hold for 30 minutes like I had to do with my bank yesterday, which really sucked. And then eventually you'll get to talk to someone and maybe you'll get some sort of resolution. The point is there, you get a resolution, but that's not even happening with PlayStation. First of all, you can't get them on the phone. Like, you'll just sit on hold indefinitely forever. They'll never answer and eventually they'll hang up, which really sucks. Then if you say, oh, I'm gonna go get a live chat person, which, you know, no matter the website you use live chat on, it never works out the way you want it to. You will get someone eventually on PlayStation support with live chat, but unfortunately, you'll only get a couple of responses, none of them helpful, and then the people will just shut down the chat and say, we helped you, have a nice day. So obviously this really sucks, and the only reason I can think of as to why this is happening is maybe Sony is outsourcing some of the repair work that they're doing, because over on the Steam Deck channel I have Deck Ready, I had a terrible experience with this third-party company called United Radio. They cover Nintendo with the Switch, with like Joy-Cons and stuff like that, and people have been complaining on Reddit for years about their service because it's terrible. Like, people will send in stuff like special edition Joy-Cons to be repaired, right? Because they have stick drift, and Nintendo says, okay, we'll fix this under warranty. And then they get back either the wrong amount of Joy-Cons, they'll get back just the normal red and blue ones because the company will end up keeping their special edition ones that are super limited, and then Nintendo says, sorry, you're SOL. They'll get stuff back where United Radio didn't fix the original issue, and then they also break more stuff. And my personal experience with the Steam Deck was basically that. So my Steam Deck, what happened is I dropped it, so that's on me, right? Like, I dropped it on the ground and the left bumper broke. There's like a little contact in there that has a little button on it that the bumper hits that got busted back off the motherboard. So I was like, all right, I'll send this into Valve. Now, the first time I had to send my Steam Deck in for RMA, I sent it directly to Valve. They sent me a brand new Steam Deck in like 2 days. It was awesome. This time, went to United Radio. It takes like 3 weeks to hear from them. And they're like, oh yeah, so when we were opening up your Steam Deck, the back of it, we noticed that one of the little clips was gone on the back casing of the Steam Deck. And yeah, we can't just replace the back of the Steam Deck because, you know, that would only be a $3 part. We got to replace the entire front assembly of your Steam Deck. You know, that's just gonna cost you like 150 bucks. Oh, and because there was other damage, we're not gonna fix that bumper unless you pay for all of the damage, because you could send it back and say, oh, we didn't fix it totally right. So since the issue with my Steam Deck was something that I couldn't fix on my own, they held it ransom, basically. They were like, pay us 150 bucks to fix the issue you want, and even though you don't want it, we're gonna replace everything else on your Steam Deck. And then I get it back after 3 more weeks. I go to put my SSD in it, and I noticed that not only is the little clasp that they said was broken, that they were adamant that they needed to fix for 150 bucks, not fixed, it was still busted off, so they didn't even replace what they said. It also had all of its screws stripped. So I had to hit them up and be like, hey, send me a new pack of screws because I have to get in my Steam Deck more than once. And it took me like over an hour to get all the screws out, and it took another 3 weeks to get those damn screws. All of this is to say is that if Sony is going through a third-party company for all of us normies and then giving PlayStation Stars people priority access to Sony support, I can totally see why something like this would happen. And regardless, I think they need to figure it out sooner rather than later, because I've dealt with crappy warranty support from Sony in the past. Even when you pay for it, it's not great. And we've heard so many great things about it being improved this generation that I don't want to see this kind of hitting their reputation, because things were really trending up in terms of hardware reliability with the PS5 and also Sony's ability to fix things if they do break down. And the last news story I have for you guys today relates to PlayStation Stars, because remember when that came out, Sony was like super adamant. They were like, no guys, these are not NFTs. These are digital little trophies, little collectibles you can keep on your PlayStation app just to prove that you're the biggest PlayStation fan around, and you'll also get priority access to PlayStation support. Remember that? Well, now Sony is throwing out more patents that basically say, yep, we're going to turn what PlayStation Stars little trophies are into NFTs, and you'll be able to sell and trade them to your friends on other consoles. And it looks like in the patent, they're talking about being able to trade them over PC, maybe even Xbox, maybe Nintendo Switch. You're gonna be able to trade your little Nathan Drake statue that looks kind of cool and you would want in real life, but it's just digital on your phone, and maybe you'll make like $6.50 on it or something, like $6.50. The point there is having real money involved with video game item trading kind of sucks, and the one company, ironically, who seems to get away with this more than anyone and no one really complains about it is Valve. They have all of these knife skins and weapon skins for Counter-Strike, and I just saw one sold for I think like over $100,000 or something like that. Like, people are trading this stuff on the Steam marketplace and making tons and tons of money on it, which is crazy because it's literally just like digital gambling, right? I also don't understand why they're spending money on this and why they're doing it at all now, especially when everything related to NFTs seems to be drying up. The only company that still continually talks about NFTs is Square Enix, and we know how out of touch they are. Like, they released like 50 games last year and marketed 0 of them, and then they were like, why did none of our games sell well? And it's like, well, Square Enix, you released 3 strategy games within like a month of each other on the Nintendo Switch. They're like 50 hours long. I wasn't even supposed to get through one of those, let alone all 3 of them. So yeah, to see Square Enix talking about NFTs and now see Sony talking about NFTs, it's like, Sony, you're so much smarter than Square Enix. What are you guys doing over there? This is such a waste of resources because it's just gonna kill your reputation and make everyone mad, like I am right now.